everybody, welcome to the Chaos Gym, and today we're gonna start a new series called Card Dissection, where I bring on a special guest every week and we just talk about one card in depth. Like, we're gonna go nitty gritty, Russell Lepar style. Today I brought with me Fred Hoban, resident Vespiquen expert, someone else who's crazy enough to play the deck with me through thick and thin. So Fred, tell the people, if they don't know you by now, a little bit about yourself and your accomplishments.
All right. Well, first off, I want to say I've yet to play in a tournament where I played Vespiquen and regretted it. Looked back on it, didn't think it was a good play. So that's my opinion on the card, at least. So you should know. I started playing in the fall last year. I top 8 at Nats was my big accomplishment. Was able to top 16, top 32, a couple of regionals. But just basically all playing Vespiquen. Top 8 at Nats and did well at Worlds with Vespiquen Vileplume. All my regionals were Flareon. Just kind of play Vespiquen, win games. Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, same, dude. So Fred and I, we talk about Vespiquen, we talk about Flareon a lot. We're both fanatics. We have not given up our passion towards the card, so we kind of came across the idea of, hey, how about we dissect it for everybody else watching? And it's like we could do this for every card down the road, like bring on different people every week, talk about certain cards. But week one, we're doing our favorite card, Vespiquen. So I guess when Vespiquen started out, when it first came out, everyone knew, okay, Vespiquen and the existence of the already existing Flareon archetype. It's just like, oh, this will make it stronger. Vespiquen's going to replace Flareon as an attacker because of the free retreat, and it's just strictly better. But that's not the case, and the first regionals I played Vespiquen at, I took it with a weird approach where I didn't play the typical 4-4 Flareon, 4-4 Vespiquen that everyone is accustomed to. I went with like a 2-2 Flareon, like 4-4 Vespiquen, and like a 2-2 Swellow line.
Yeah, I definitely remember messing around with like 2-2 Flareon lines, like throwing in Milotic with Sparkling Ripples because I just love that card.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And it just never seemed correct to me. You always want all 8 attackers because you're going to discard stuff in weird spots, and I'm sure you came to the same conclusion.
Right. After playing that regionals, I was like a game off of making day 2, and I was like, man, I wish I had more attackers. Like that was still the issue I was running into. And after Jimmy O'Brien pretty much went on his tear and went undefeated with, I guess, the most consistent Vespiquen list that everyone had seen in a long time, it became the new fad. A lot of players took it, changed a couple cards, made it customizable, because that's what the best thing about the Vespiquen archetype is. It's one of the most customizable lists. Fred and I have fundamentally different playstyles, and we disagree on a lot of techs in the deck, but we both have hella success with it.
Yeah. Rahul likes to explode with his shamans and just like put on too much pressure for your opponent to handle. I just like to count prizes, make sure I'm always one ahead in the prize race, discard my shamans, AZ them.
That's why I lost to him.
But Vespiquen is just so versatile that you're able to win either way. You know?
Mm-hmm. So I guess it's evolved more over time. We've seen the last season come and go, with Vespiquen no longer being a dominant force in its own in Standard. It was overshadowed by the existence of Night March, which could do everything some would say better. Or
but then we saw it adapt in Wambolt's craziness that was Vespiquen Vileplume, and we saw a way that Vespiquen was just able to beat Night March and beat these other decks through what I know, at least to me, when I first saw the concept, seemed absurd. Like, how are you going to put down Vileplume? You're so reliant on items. But
right. I legitimately saw the deck, and I was like, I was driving to a cities, and I just like sat there. I saw his article. I like looked through my binder. I'm like, well, I am going to a card store, so I might as well play this. And then like I'm playing games, and I'm like, what is going on? I have like 6 cards left in my deck at the end of turn 1.
Yeah, I was like, I looked at the list. I was like, 4 DC, 4 Vespiquen. You got to take 6 prizes. That doesn't really work out. Oh, you play the cute little Bumblebee. That doesn't work either. So it never made sense to me. And then I remember I picked up the deck for states, and I actually brought it to 2 states. Both states I did horribly. Ended up dropping from the tournaments, or whiff and cut or whatever, got no CP. But I guess I stuck with the deck. I kept testing it, kept playing it, and I found, like, by the time I was going into Nats, I realized that going into every matchup, there was a way for me to win. Whether it was like against Mega Man, if you were playing against Mega Man and they're going first, they could do all their nonsense, get a Spirit Link and an energy attached. If you can just swing for 170, which the deck is capable of doing, you just win. And that's what you have to do. Sometimes you just have to get rid of the Vileplume, not put it down, and just out pressure a deck that isn't able to keep up with your price trade.
And after the Vespiquen Vileplume had emerged, we went back to the fact that we were flip-flopping between Standard and Expanded was a little crazy throughout the year. So we went back to Expanded, where the deck was kind of revolutionized a little bit with the introduction of stadium cards that were actually playable in the deck, because before the list that Jimmy O'Brien had brought out had no stadiums. It was just the most consistent 4-4-4 of everything. I had begun playing Parallel. I was a huge advocate for Parallel City in the deck because I was one who, as Fred said, liked to explode early, and just bouncing the Shamans off your bench meant zero repercussions in any matchup.
I remember a similar thing happened to me. I went into Virginia with no stadiums in my list. I was kind of going off of Jimmy O'Brien's Lancaster list and Dylan Bryan's Fort Wayne list, or Ryan Sablehouse's Fort Wayne list. That's who it was. But Michael Pramawat did really well with Toadbats that was just playing Silent Lab instead of Verbank. And then Israel Sosa did great with Evil Tall Archeops with Parallel City and Silent Lab. And the Silent Lab just kills you, especially if they go Quaking Punch Silent Lab. You have like 4 outs to draw in your deck, 5. It's like your Sycamores and your Ends.
Bad.
So I ended up putting in 2 stadiums, actually. I copied both you and Baxter. I took your Parallel City and I took Kevin Baxter's Tropical Beach. And I played that in Georgia and Ontario to get top 16, top 32.
Kevin Baxter revolutionized the deck once again with a much different approach from everybody else. He felt that Mega Man Electric was the most targetable deck of the weekend, so he went for the Maxie's Gallade variant, which was kind of unorthodox at the time, and it was really weird to deal with. As a player, I didn't know how to approach the mirror match, because that was just something that threw everything off for me. And he played Tropical Beach because he opted for the slower, I'm going to set up behind my Wobbuffets, because he played 2, which was mainly to deal with the Archeops, and just Wobbuffet was strong because a lot of decks relied on abilities. They still do, and Shaman is such a pivotal part of every deck, so... Then, like, we came in, season was going. We pretty much have eclipsed all of our expanded events at this point. We've hit Standard. Vespiquen is nowhere to be seen except for in Vespiquen in Night March, which I still don't completely understand to this day. There's merit to having it. I played it for Worlds. I was very dissatisfied with the deck itself. And then we came to States time, where Azul Garcia Griego showed up with a Vespiquen Raichu Gallade deck, which was nuts. Azul had also sent myself the list, so I played it the same weekend he did when he won a States, as opposed to me getting top 8. But the deck had taken a new shift, as opposed to the slow, I'm going to Blacksmith because I have Flareons. In Expanded and in Standard, you play it with, like... People played it with, like, Bronzong. People played it with, like, some form of energy acceleration because they thought that they needed it. But Azul said, I don't need any of that. We're just going to play 4 DCEs. We're going to play puzzles, and that's it. We're going to lay on the gas, and if we run out of gas, we lose. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And puzzles were just very good in that deck for setting up the Gallade, and also just to use them with unknowns. You look at the top 3, take 1 with Farewell Letter. They were beautiful for the deck. Going back to Vespiquen Night March, that I think was, to me at least, when I looked at Vespiquen Night March, the Vespiquen was more to counter like Water Box and Jolteon EX and certain things like that. It seemed more to me it was just a Night March deck where people were playing Vespiquen to help alleviate some of Night March's bad matchups. And I didn't really agree with that. But looking at Nationals and the meta that was, it was clearly the correct play. I mean, Nick Robinson won the whole thing with it.
Yeah, Waterbox was a big threat at Nationals. It was also a big threat at Worlds. I just didn't manage to hit a single one. Then we
do against it, so.
And then we walked into the Nationals metagame where everyone just have either played, like, Nick Robinson won with Vespiquen Night March, and Night March was Waterbox with the 2 biggest decks of the weekend. Where yet again Azul showed up with a revolutionary deck, Vespiquen Gallade Zebstrika. Man walked into my room 40 minutes before the event, said, hey, want to play this deck? I said, got all the cards for it, so might as well. Um, the deck was it had a very similar purpose to Night March, but you had more of a late game answer to a lot of things. Whereas Night March would be one of those decks where you can get end out of the game, you're playing puzzles, you're playing a lot of things. So it came down to, hey, I have late game consistency with my Gallade. The deck played a Marowak, which was to address the Giratina issue. Um, and then the deck was very strong. And then the curtains closed on the 2016 season, leaving us with Vespiquen Jan Mega winning the World Championships in seniors.
Yeah, Jesper's list was certainly interesting. I don't know. I think there were some questionable things. He only played like 2 compressor, 2 acrobike, but I mean, the kid clearly knew how to play his deck. He won some bad matchups with it. So it's one of those things that we haven't seen it do well at any other event since, really. I played against a couple at Worlds. I actually lost to one. It was my only loss day one. So I think it's a decent deck, just not quite in our meta as it's evolved now.
Mm-hmm. Now, our metagame now, we've come to the 2016-2017 season. We've lost Compressor, one of Vespiquen's best friends. And where does that leave us? Is Vespiquen a dead card? Everyone said yes. Myself, Whambolt, and Fred said no. We tried some crazy things. Whambolt had put out a article detailing Vespiquen Zoroark with clef keys and unknowns and just keeping the gas flowing. And in the same time frame, I had pushed out a Vespiquen Zebstrika Garbodor deck, which was, albeit the list was really crappy because it was like a first draft, because it played Psychic Stir Die and stuff. So.
Yeah, this at that same time was Orlando Regionals. I showed up with Vespiquen Vileplume in Standard. It was very interesting. I managed to go 6-1-2, but bubbled out of day 2. But it was interesting. Volcanion was a very tough matchup, and I hadn't tested it. So I went like lost, tie, then I won my last one, and I kind of realized over the progression of games that you could actually win by putting out deck out pressure, Lysandering up a Volcanion EX, just burrowing cards with Bunnelby, stuff like that, because they have to draw into their Olympia, right? Or they have to manually retreat, something like that. So it was a better deck throughout the tournament, but it's kind of inconsistent. Battle Compressor is very missed, and I don't know if it's playable unless you're crazy as me.
Same. So Vespiquen has come to and Alex Hill also played it this past weekend in London, bringing up a lot of hype, and I guess like everyone's super happy that the fact that it did well, but on the same token, we have to caution that hype because even Alex wrote in his article, the deck is not good. I just hit like 10 Evitals.
And he gave his matchup synopsis, and you see like day 1 it's Evil Tallgarb 6 rounds in a row, and then Volcanion, and he loses the last one. It's like, yeah, when you hit Evil Tallgarb a bunch, you're gonna win, but the deck definitely struggles against Megas, even with Klefki. It's
a rough deck to play. So we've hashed a lot of the stuff out with Vespiquen. So let's talk a little bit about its attacks, what the card does, and why it was so dominant for what it was. Vespiquen being a stage 1 might not seem like the strongest card because it's a stage 1. It has 90 HP, it's very easily exploitable, but the free retreat makes it a lot better than people assume it to be.
Also the first attack.
The first attack, yeah, that's right. Intelligence Gathering for 1 colorless for 10 damage. Draw cards until you have 6 in your hand. A lot of people only look at the card and go, oh, I'm going to be revenge. Sure, I'm be revenging for like 50 or 60 because I have a lot of Pokemon little Pokemon on the discard, and I don't have any other options. But a lot of players have to understand that sometimes their hand isn't as strong as they're like, or they have like a 1-card hand and no supporter. You have to divulge the information to your opponent saying, hey, I have a weak hand. Because if you end your turn with 1 card, they're going to either think it's a Sycamore and end you, or they're going to play their turn out and say, hey, you have a bad hand. And in that case, you just Intelligence Gathering, take the 10 damage, and draw 5 more cards. Vespiquens are floodable. Once you set up 2 or 3, you're just going to start going 1 by 1 by 1 by 1. And all you need is a DCE to attack. It's very simple once you set up with Vespiquen. You're just digging for DCs.
And a lot of times the damage just doesn't add up. Like, whatever you're be revenging for isn't going to make you KO that thing 1 turn earlier. Just 10 damage with Intelligence Gathering and drawing into your compressors, etc., will allow you to still get the same, still do the same, still get the same knockout just over more attacks. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine, dude. So, why is Vespiquen so strong? Well, in the expanded format, Vespiquen paired with Flareon made, or Vespiquen paired with Vileplume as well, made an excellent combination. But in the Vespiquen Flareon deck, you've got your 4 spots for Vespiquen, your 8 spots for Vespiquen line, 8 spots for the Flareon line. But where do the rest of the spots come from? And myself and Fred are 2 players who are very fundamentally different in the Vespiquen metagame. So we had very different choices. For example, Fred, the Jirachi EX is a very adaptable tech. There's the promo Jirachi that people played. Fred played a Marowak in Philadelphia to deal with the Shredded Giratina on Toad.
And got 2-0'd by Toad Tina. Yeah, that was probably not my best choice.
In Virginia Regionals, Kevin Baxter ended up playing a Gallade. I liked heavy Audino in the deck to deal with Toad, etc. The reason Vespiquen is so good, because in addition to having so many Pokemon you're just playing a deck that's meant to have raw consistency for the most part, that you can tech whatever attackers or whatever extra Pokemon you want in the deck to fit certain matchups. For example, you think you're going to be seeing tons of Volcanion, slap in a 1/1 Vaporeon line. Nothing's stopping you.
A card that doesn't see enough love is Unknown. Unknown is like the heart and soul of Vespiquen,
Oh
man.
god, it's so good.
To discard a card and draw. I can't tell you how many times I'll sit there and I'll like have no Shaman in deck or something, Ultra Ball for the Unknown for 1, and just rip a Sycamore or something. It's just sometimes you get there.
Unknown's very good in this deck.
I know one tech me and you disagree on a whole lot is Mr. Mime.
Yep.
I hate Mr. Rahul sees value in Mr. Mime.
I do.
I have never played a game where I thought I needed it. It's like if they didn't KO my active, then they're screwed. If they did KO my active and I promote the thing with 30 HP, I evolve and I attack it. The 30 HP on the bench was irrelevant.
I've faced myself in a lot of situations where I end up pushing Toadbat's players to the point where they have to attack with Crobat, and Crobat can't hit the bench when you have a Mime out, which is fundamentally different thing we've encountered in our metagames. Like I said, the techs that come in play usually are to counter your metagame. For example, I played Flareon and Vespiquen two days in a row at a cities marathon, like 2 back-to-back cities. One day I played decks to target one deck, and the next day I just switched like 4 cards to my 4 tech cards, you could call them, to adjust to the metagame, and you just go back in and you play.
Yeah, I mean, things like Execute, things like Jolteon, Ancient Origins. That's a card you actually convinced me to play. I started losing to Mega Ray a lot, threw in a Jolteon, Ancient Origins, and the matchup gets swung like 30%. All of a sudden, Yveltal is easier. That's a very good meta call if you're expecting any lightning type decks. That's all I'll say. And the free retreat is beautiful.
Yeah, and one of the hardest losses for the deck in Expanded, which is why it doesn't see play, is Trevenant. Like Trevenant, no matter how much you tech for Trevenant, it's such a hard matchup because Trevenant already is a coin flip matchup. But when your deck is like 30 Pokemon pretty much and like 20 items, you're usually getting locked out of the game unless you have a monstrous turn 1 where you can compress away enough stuff to make your deck so thin that all you have left is resources that'll attack every turn.
Yeah, Trevenant is a horrible matchup, one that I've gotten lucky to not hit, and I actually haven't seen it a whole lot at the expanded regionals I've gone to. I've seen it have a lot of success, win regionals, etc., but not seen it played by a majority of the meta base, and I think that's going to change.
Very much so. I think San Jose is going to be a Trevenant field.
So that makes me skeptical of Flareon right now, but when that Giratina promo comes out, then you might be in business.
Yeah. So, again, Flareon, Vespiquen, we're in Standard right now. Alex Hill went and potentially could have won the event had he made top 8 because he was in a field of Yveltal. Now, that being said, you will see Yveltal. I think that is still the best deck in Standard, but does Vespiquen really compete with a lot of the power creep in Standard without Compressor? Myself and Fred, I think, both agree on the point that it does not keep up with the power creep that exists right now. It relies on a lot of the secondary attackers, sacrificing Pokemon, hoping you don't dead draw. Garbodor sucks. Parallel City sucks for you. you have to get very lucky, and basically you have to outskill your opponents, and a lot of the time you have to hope they make a mistake so you can capitalize on it, which isn't a position you want to be with a deck like this. But
Yeah,
Vespiquen's lost a lot of its gas due to losing compressor.
it's also Giratina is a thing in standard right now, and it's almost unbeatable. Even Alex Hill wrote in his article, he's saying that he wouldn't even play the Ranger, etc.,
No,
because
yeah.
still be great Giratina. Yeah.
So that's pretty much like Vespiquen in a nutshell. I know we rambled a lot about our tournament runs and stuff because both of us have plenty of accolades, plenty of goods and bads with Vespiquen throughout our time. But we kind of dissected the card, kind of went over some of its matchups, its pros and cons. Let me know if you guys actually like this, what we're doing here. We can do with a bunch of other cards. Leave recommendations for other cards. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. You can find Fred on Facebook. Hit him up. He might not add you back, but you know, it's.
No, I add everyone back. I got only love.
And if you've got Vespiquen questions, feel free to ask either of us. Um, Other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you stick with this series.
I guess.